Good morning, everybody. Welcome to PSG of Mercer County. The professional service group is here for you, anybody who's in any kind of career transition. And of course, as we say every Friday morning, happy Aloha Friday. And so welcome. Did a little research and I found out what day it is. Today is a national day called National Flip-Flop Day, which works out perfectly for those of us who are in an aloha mood. So if you have flip-flops, you may want to wear them today. I do remember we announced it in the past before. It seems to always be the third Friday in June. Not really sure why they picked that day, but that's what it is. So it celebrates that that kind of, I don't call it a shoe, but a foot covering that we wear when we're very casual. And yes, I do have not my slippers on, but my flip-flops on today, my brown flip-flops. So that's what we get to celebrate today. And want to welcome everyone to the Professional Service Group of Mercer County. PSG of Mercer County is here for anybody in any career transition. It doesn't really matter why, whether impact by the coronavirus or the pandemic has caused a job loss. You've decided to take job loss in your own hands by changing your career, pursuing other options, so that's on you. Or maybe you've been out of the workforce for a while for family reasons and trying to re-enter the workforce. We are here to provide all sorts of resources and guidance to help you become more efficient and more effective with your own job search. We do have several resources that are available to you and available to also, some are just to our members. We do have our LinkedIn group. Our LinkedIn group really is just for you, our members. So if you are a member of our PSG group, we will accept you into our LinkedIn group. So if you are not yet a member of our LinkedIn group, just search for us on LinkedIn. PSG of Mercer County. Search for us as a group. There is a profile that's there, that's a user profile, but search for our group. And our group now has over 1,550 members, and they're all people that have been through job search before, which means that the likelihood of when you reach out to them to help you with your job search, to ask information about companies that you're investigating, people that you want to know more about, there's a good chance that when you reach out to some members in our group, that they will get back to you in fairly short order. These are people that kind of get the process of job search, so they will be, in general, pretty good at getting back to you. Some people have complained that when you reach out to people you're not connected with, they don't get back to you as quickly, but it doesn't seem to happen as often really with people in our group. And then once you're a member of our group, contribute. Maybe you'll let us know about a job fair that's coming up, or a virtual job fair, another virtual group. Maybe there's an article that you've read that you think is worthwhile. You might have even gotten one of those emails of a terrific job that's just not right for you. Well, you can copy that out of your email and you can post that into the LinkedIn group and share it with the other members of the group. Being active in LinkedIn is terrific. It's relevant and it helps with the search optimization in LinkedIn. Hopefully your profile will be found more quickly when you're more active in LinkedIn, along with being a LinkedIn all-star profile. So be active and share job leads and articles and such. And what's nice is, doesn't matter how many first degree connections that you have, any group that you belong to, you can connect to them through the group. So you can write to them, where second and third degree people you normally cannot write an email, a LinkedIn email to, but group members you can. So it expands your network greatly in LinkedIn. So, but that's just for PSG of Mercer County members. If you are clicking the link to join the group, we will not accept you right away. I do check both our mailing list and anybody who emails me and says, I just clicked. We are not accepting anybody into our group that we feel hasn't been at least to our online meetings or in-person meetings at least once before. And I may not have met everybody on this virtual meeting yet. So what I'll do is I'll reach out to you or just ask you, email me at psgofmercercounty@gmail.com. psgofmercercounty@gmail.com. Just let me know. You click to join the group because you heard about it at the meeting. I'll instantly, as soon as I check, accept you. Another resource we have, and it's not just for you, but it's for all job seekers, is our website. Our website is psgofmercercounty.org. psgofmercercounty.org. And just about everything we do is PSG of Mercer County. It is over 120 web pages of content. So I urge you, when you have a chance, go look at our website. You may find some relevant and interesting content that would be very important to help you through your job search. So it's just not a landing page to help you find the next meeting. We do have an event calendar. Our event calendar is populated into October already. So you may want to look at our event calendar, see if there's a topic or presenter of interest that's very relevant to you, and then put that in your event calendar. We don't obligate you to come and attend these meetings every week, but there may be something that is very much of interest to you, and you'll want to make sure that you attend. We also have job boards pages. On our job boards pages, we don't have job postings. We don't have exact job postings, but what we do have are links to over 2,600 company career pages. And that's just in Mercer County and our 6 border counties, which does include those folks overseas in Bucks County. So, of course, go take a look at our job boards pages. You may find links to companies of interest to you, or you may even be surprised of the companies that are in a fairly close geographic area to our service area. So you may use it to create a targeted company list. Another thing we do like to celebrate, certainly among the things we like to celebrate are landings. And often when we do, we ask people to come back to a meeting and bring some sort of snack like cookies or donuts. We can't do that virtually unless any of you have your own donuts with you. But I did hear that Terry Michael landed, and Terry is on the call today. So congratulations, Terry. Terry had let me know that she landed. And so good luck. Wish you all the best. If you want to just let us know in our chat, you're welcome to as well, if that you've landed, or maybe that you've had some good interviews. That was something you can certainly want to share, is perfectly okay. Mostly we're going to be using chat for our questions and answers. In just a moment, I'm going to turn the presentation over to John. And John, he's going to take the breaks that he feels he needs to interact with you as best as possible in this webinar format. And so I'll turn it over to John. So we are using chat to post comments. So I just ask if you could just minimize the kind of hello comments and here's how to connect with me comments. Not that those are unimportant, but it makes it a little harder for us to read through the chat for the Q&A. So just kind of keep the other information maybe till the end of the meeting. As a reminder, do keep your audio on mute, your microphone on mute. And there are buttons at the bottom of your screen. It's kind of a black screen. You should be seeing John's first slide right now. And the buttons at the bottom, the 2 that you have active at least, should be the green mic button and the green camera button for turning your microphone and your camera on and off. Please keep your microphone off. I'll be checking periodically if I hear any background noise to turn a rogue camera off. I'm sorry, a rogue microphone off. Camera, it's your call. If you want to turn your microphone on, your camera on or your camera off, that's up to you. Bad hair day or whatever the concern is, that's up to you. I'm keeping my camera on. John will probably keep his camera on, I'm sure. That's all up to you. Okay, so I think we are just ready to roll. And so I'm happy to say that I'm very pleased to welcome our speaker and presenter this morning, John Hadley. John helps his job seekers who are frustrated with their job search. He also works with professionals struggling to become and to be seen as influential leaders in organizations. After graduating from Stanford University, John worked in the financial services industry for 25 years in roles ranging from product manager to chief actuary. He then opened a successful systems consulting practice, which generated over $2.5 million in revenue. In 2003, he started his career search counseling business and has helped hundreds of professionals land the job and pay they deserve. John is a very popular speaker and author on career and career search topics. In addition to editing and writing for the management and personal development magazine, The Stepping Stone, John writes his own monthly career tips email newsletter for over 9,500 subscribers each month, bringing expert advice on marketing yourself for career search and for accelerating your career growth. You can find that and a variety of resources on his website, jhacareers.com, jhacareers.com. And by the way, you'll also find there a link to sign up for his newsletter if you're interested in doing that. So PSG of Mercer County is very pleased to welcome one of our very good friends, John Hadley.
Thank you, David. So we're here today to talk about interviewing in the COVID era, what's different and what's not different. So the agenda I had in mind was, let's talk a little bit about what's different about this era, and then how does that affect interviewing, and what do you need to do to be successful, and what hasn't changed about the process. And then, depending on time, I have two other interview-related topics we can get into about having an influential conversation and tension management, which a lot of people don't really think about very actively. So let's get right into it. I'd like to have everyone just, whether we want to do it in the chat box or want to bring people off of mute for a minute, to say, what is it that's different about this era that could possibly affect interviewing? And I'm going to open up a sheet where we can just take some notes to put down. So let's see if I can get to the other screen without messing up our share here. Can you see the blank screen now, David? Okay. So
yes,
what is different about this environment that could affect interviewing? And anyone, put in the chat box. Tell us what you think. You seeing anything? David, you're muted, so I can't hear if you're telling me anything.
Sorry. I was sticking by my own.
I saw your lips moving, so.
Yeah, the David puppet was talking. Let's see. So a couple things are coming through. Video interviews, virtual interviews, video interviews.
Right.
Let's see. Nearly all interviews and jobs will be remote jobs. The length of time to get reemployed. James wrote, more disconnected, more abstract.
That's an interesting point, James. Expand on that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, and you can write another comment, which would be fine. Nonverbal cues are not available.
Nonverbal cues, I'm sorry?
Not available.
Yes. Well, yes. I mean, you can get a little bit from, you can watch body language, you can see what's in the background and use some of that, but the normal, like really close physical cues are gone. Yep.
Remote experience prior to COVID. So probably it's limited remote experience prior to COVID.
Yeah, that's a really good point that we'll talk about that a little bit.
Similar to the nonverbal cues, body language is even more critical.
Right.
This is an interesting one. Easier to read your notes. I guess that means you could have a separate screen with your notes, or keep the paper right in front of you and they'll never know.
Yeah, well, what I like to do is take a sheet from one of those big Post-it boards and stick it up behind the computer and just have keywords or very short bullet points on it. So it's up there where I can look easily without it looking like I'm not looking in the camera. But I don't want to write a lot of stuff, because that's the downside to being able to read your notes, is that it's really easy to get into this. I'm reading all my notes and I'm losing the engagement.
Sure. Where did it go? Just body language, easy to read. Oh, interviewing in person with a mask.
That, and yeah, we'll presumably get to that point soon, and that's gonna feel weird.
Nonverbal cues, use of chat box and AI on career sites.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's been there, but I think it's being used more, certainly.
Mhm.
More job competition, or I guess it's more competition for the jobs that are available. More job competition.
Right.
Gaps between interviews, 3 to 4 weeks.
Which, okay.
I guess the process is taking longer.
I haven't found that actually. I have a colleague who interviewed during this period, and it didn't seem like the gaps were any longer than normal, and he did get hired.
Hmm.
But experience varies. Like Marty would say, it depends.
Yeah, and actually, for some of you, your comments are wonderful, but they're similar to what we've heard already. I'm just reading through them so we don't have as many duplicates, but a lot of you are on the same page with each other of comments that are here already. Not having the full attention of the interviewer because of COVID concerns.
That's an interesting one.
That's interesting. Okay. Virtual interviewing more structured, likely more of an agenda, not as much of a feel for the room. Another is where to look, a loss of direct eye contact.
Ah.
And if you notice,
it's good to put the googly eyes up near your cam to remind you to always look there.
Well, see, that's the advantage of having glasses. You could just put little eyes on the top of the glasses. Let's see. Again, a couple things that seem to be repetitive. Oh, here's one, offers getting pulled. I think a lot of people experienced that at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah, I think some of that happened at the beginning. I don't see that as a continuing trend any more than in any other environment.
Okay.
Myself.
Sometimes lots of background noise.
Yeah, and that's one of the things you want to be very sensitive yourself, not just noise, but everything to do with your background. In fact, that's one of the bonuses that Marty and I have for that program we're doing Wednesday night is a detailed report on interviewing in the COVID era, and particularly all the things you need to do around your video presence.
Okay. We're getting near the end. And related to that, inexperience of the person giving the video interview because they're not familiar with them. Maybe that's one of the reasons why there's a little background noise.
Yep.
Harder to understand the culture of the organization because of no site visit.
Yeah. I had a colleague who ran a staffing firm who used to tell everyone to go at some point before the interview, practice getting there, go sit in the parking lot, watch everyone coming out and going in, see how they're acting. Are they happy? Can't do that if you can't go to the site or if no one's working at the site.
Technical difficulties, stopping and starting, reconnecting, technical difficulties.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, how to leave a lasting impression via video.
Record it. No.
Well, as being, if you're not the organizer, you may not be able to record it. But,
that's right.
How do you? Yeah, and Alex is mentioning video interviewing is something new. So the candidate needs to learn to become better than his or her competition.
Yes. So this is a pretty good list.
Yep.
And particularly like that last one, it is new. It's new on both sides. We're not used to doing it this way, which actually presents you with an opportunity, because if you work at getting very good, at getting very professional, at presenting a really good background, etc., not only do you stand out among other candidates, but now as the hiring manager, I look at you and say, oh, wow, this is how we're going to be operating, and look how fluent he or she is in this technology. That would be really good to have on my team. So the more you do to improve your skills, the more hireable you get, because you're demonstrating something that's not necessarily in the job description, but it's something that could be extremely valuable to that team. And same with the technical difficulties. I mean, we know they're going to happen. There's going to be a dropped line. The cam's going to freeze for a little while, whatever. But if you do what you can first to minimize those, making sure you've closed all applications, you've got all your phone on mute, and anything that could distract is away, and you've got the highest internet bandwidth that you can get. So you've done all the things to minimize it is one thing, but then we still know something's going to happen potentially. So the key is, how do you deal with that? Now, I've been on many webinars or chamber meetings or virtual happy hours where there's someone who's, they got the iPhone and it's moving around all the time, and it's very distracting, and something goes wrong there, and they're saying, oh, this technology is terrible. Well, if I'm a hiring manager and I see your reaction to the technical difficulty, that you're complaining about it, you're blaming it on the bad internet, whatever, that tells me what you're going to do on the job, and I'm immediately turned off. On the other hand, if you're like, we lost the line, let's get connected again, or you're very upbeat, you just take it in stride, that tells me that you're going to take challenges on the job in stride too. So just how you deal with these things speaks volumes to whether I want to hire you, whether you're going to be a great member of my team. So let's go back to the regular slides. Let's see, the easiest. And okay, did I do it right? Are the slides showing again?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So that was a good list of things that are different about the COVID era, and let's look at how these things do affect interviewing. So, and here's a list that I had, which just to see if we've got anything else. Yeah, the interviewers aren't used to it. Their attitude towards remote work and workers may be different now, because they're starting to get used to people working remotely. They know that that's what's going to happen. I mean, I don't care what happens with opening up. Companies are not going back to the same way they operated before. There's going to be a much higher percentage of remote work going forward. That colleague I was telling you about, who interviewed in these last couple of months, it was a remote role for a company down in Texas. They had 3 different roles they were actually interviewing for, because he has like me, he's an actuary, so he has specialized credentials. They had 3 different actuarial roles open, very good, very high level roles, and they were interviewing them to see which of the 3 would be the best fit. He never met with anyone in person in the whole process. In fact, most of his interviews were by phone instead of video, and he got the offer. There was no issue, and he was able to negotiate a little bit higher offer as well. So the whole attitude towards hiring remotely is very different and will continue to be very different than it has been in the past. This opens up your marketplace to remote. Now, that doesn't mean just start sending your applications into any company anywhere in the world, because frankly, sending your applications in is the worst way to try to find a job anyway. But building connections to people in other parts of the country that can get you considered for those remote opportunities is great. You've got a much broader potential market. You may never meet the interviewers or your boss in person, even maybe not even after starting for quite some time. And I would argue that references and referrals are going to be even more important in this environment. Because think about it, I did all the hiring, actuarial hiring for my company for 13 years. I liked having people come into my office, getting to know them, getting to see how they acted in that setting, introducing them to a number of people. I did once in a while do a phone screening when someone was remote, but pretty much I did almost all my interviewing in person. So now having to interview people remotely, even if I get the video, I'm possibly going to be a little more hesitant that I've gotten to know them that well as versus in person. So I think the person who has the referral or the person who has a really strong reference is probably that's going to be weighed even more than it has, because that gives me something else to judge them on other than the hour we've been in front of a video camera, where I'm saying, well, they can be on and handle themselves really well for this hour, but do I really know them that well? And as someone pointed out, the advantage of keeping out notes as long as you do it the right way. And there are some new skills that we just started to touch on there that aren't necessarily in the job description that may become differentiators in this market. The technology and how you deal with it, because I know that on the job, you're going to have to use this technology. Yeah, you may not be interviewing, but you're going to be having remote conferences. You're going to be having phone conferences. You're going to be doing a lot of your work through these vehicles instead of in person. So the more that I see you in the interview process and all the interactions we have, being really professional in the way you do it, standing out among other people, the more you become someone I really want on my team. And your ability to create rapport and interact with people by phone and by video, because it is a little different than in person. So again, that's a quality that I'm going to say, oh, he's so good at this, or she's so good at this. That's going to be really valuable on the job, because they're going to have to do the same thing on the job to influence people, build connections to people throughout the company. And your facility with remote teamwork itself, because again, it may not be in the job description, but I'm anticipating that when I hire you, an awful lot of your work is going to be remote. You're going to be working on remote teams, or you're going to be managing remote teams. So I am going to judge you to some extent by how well you do that. What stories have you told me that demonstrate that you are incredibly productive remotely, that you have all the follow-up skills and the organizational skills, and you're not in a cluttered office, all this sort of stuff that I say, I can see this person being really productive working for me remotely, and making it really easy for me to manage this person remotely, and make it really easy for this person to interact with people and be very productive on teams remotely, and being very productive in the way that they go about managing remote employees. So all of those things are things that you're going to be judged on, even if there's no mention of them anywhere in the job description. So make sure you've got stories that illustrate those things. And then your demeanor. Particularly in the last couple months, people were down. It was a very difficult environment. A lot of people were very worried about the future, and still there is that. So the person who I can see being this beacon of light in my organization, who comes across as, not that you're jumping up on the table and you're Pollyanna, but that you are presenting things in a very positive way, that you're very upbeat, that when that technical glitch happens, you're like, yeah, okay, now let's move on. And you're always very upbeat and positive. That's a quality that right now is really, really critical to my team. So again, even if it's nowhere shown in the job description or anything like that, the more you can demonstrate that, the more you become someone that I desperately want on my team. So by the way, if you have questions as we go along, feel free to put them in the chat box. David's monitoring that, and he'll let me know if he has questions that come through, because I do like things to be interactive. So now what I'd like to do is, I know I've done a presentation for the group before on the critical interview stages. What I'd like to do is look at this now from the perspective of what's different in each of these stages. How does this era affect those? So this is my homer template, how to hit a homer in interviews. And it's broken down into the homework stage, the opening of the interview, the middle of the interview, the end, and the resale. And the opening and the end are really short. The middle is where most of the interview takes place, and that's the jazz concert where I got to react to what's going on and improvise according to the questions I'm getting and so on. So in the homework stage, think about, this is everything you're doing before you ever get to an interview. And what's your goal in that stage? Why are you doing so much homework before you have any interviews and before you have this specific interview? I would argue that the reason is confidence. The more you prepare, the more you come in feeling really prepared, the more confident you will be, because you want to exude confidence in any interview. So how does that part really get impacted by COVID? Well, the things in orange are the ones that I think are most affected by this. I mean, in general, you're doing all the stuff before you ever have any interviews. You're making sure you got a resume that's a really powerful sales brochure, that every bullet point has results in it, that your cover letter really engages me and makes me want to know more, as opposed to just the laundry list of things you've done, that your LinkedIn profile matches those and gets me really engaged, and a headline that, not a headline that says I'm in transition, but a headline that says what value you can bring to someone. Your marketing message, your 30-second pitch, your answer to how, what do you do, all of the stories that you've put together, the answers to difficult questions. These are all things you're doing ahead of time. And then when you have a specific interview, you're going to do all this research. You're going to research the company, their products, the market. You're going to look at the opening statement that you give, what I call the hero story. You're going to look at the interviewers themselves, try to do all the research you can, look up their LinkedIn profile, look up press releases from the company, think about specific questions that you might be asked and what you might answer about them. Think about your critical stories, 3 to 5 critical stories that you would definitely want to get across in this particular interview. And now we've always said, okay, clothes, hairs, professional image, those are all really important. You want to make sure, you're properly coiffed. You've gotten a haircut recently, which up until this last week or so has been kind of a challenge. That your clothes are very professional. That you just present a professional image. Now that professional image, that gets to more than just you. That gets to the background behind you in your camera, the noise, the lighting, all of the different things that could affect how you come across professionally. So that is a big one. And the more you practice that, the more you go on these meetings and look at afterwards, look at the recording and say, okay, did that look as best I possibly could? Did I look very professional? Was I wearing the right clothes? Did my lighting work? Did I sound, does my mic sound good? All of those things. You practice them and make sure that before you have an interview, you've got that down. You really know that you are going to look really well. And that has to do with, and then your video presence itself, how you come across in general, not just the appearance, but do you command the meeting the way you would an in-person meeting? Are you really good at coming across as this engaging professional I would want on my team? So all the preparation you can do on those last 2 points is going to pay off in spades when you actually have an interview. So David, are there any questions that have come up that you want to bring up?
Okay, let's see. Let's see, Dominic is upset about haircut.
I can understand that, but you know, it's the sort of thing that we got to find a way to deal with it. Because think of it this way. Okay, it's one of these challenges, and it may be a very difficult challenge. But as an interviewer, I'm judging you on how you deal with challenges, how you overcome them. So even if you have to go and get a friend or your spouse or someone to do a little trimming so that you look more professional, you do that, because this is a very it may be an awkward challenge, but it's not that difficult compared to the sort of challenges you might run into on a major project on the job. And it's just this visceral reaction, whether it's fair or not. An interviewer is going to judge everything they see, everything they hear, everything you do, and whether they explicitly bring it up, it's making an impact in their mind on how is this person going to deal with challenges on the job? How are they going to operate on the job? So if you show up with your hair is just a huge mess, I'm saying, well, if that's the best they can do with that problem, what are they going to do with these things on the job? And I know it's, you might say it's not fair because it doesn't translate, but what do they have to go on?
So Debbie is asking, what do you recommend for lighting?
Well, I actually got a lighting kit that lets me be more professional. It's the cowboy lighting kit. But you don't have to go that far. But there are a lot of tips around that you can find around what you should do, like in terms of, lighting should always be in front of you, a little bit higher. It shouldn't be behind you. You shouldn't have a window. I have a window over on the side, but I have the blinds closed when I do a webinar, because otherwise it creates this, bad lighting. But yeah, they're all different things you can do, and that report, that is one of the areas that report covers that we're giving out as a bonus for that Ask the Expert session on Wednesday.
And Dominic has a similar question. Any tips for people who wear glasses when using their PC? I get glare on the screen. I think it actually comes from the PC screen rather than the lighting. So I guess it's glare on the eyeglasses.
It's entirely possible. And so this is one of the things where you got to practice. You got to practice moving your lighting different ways, having the cam angle at the right place. If worse comes to worse, if you've got a screen where things are big, I might consider just taking my glasses off, because in my case, things are a little blurrier, but I can still read everything. I could see the other person, so I might just take them off for that. But this is where you want to practice doing this in different environments, in different settings, to see what works and what minimizes that.
Okay, and Jeffrey has a question. Do you recommend doing all of the virtual interviews inside?
Yes,
I guess it's
absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, because outside it's going to be you're going to have a lot of variability in terms of the quality. You might, all it takes is a little wind rustling in the leaves, and suddenly your sound is bad, or a siren goes off, or whatever. But more importantly, what signal are you sending to the interviewer? You're sending in that case, you're sending this very casual signal that, the way I operate is I sit outside on my deck. So I don't think you want an interviewer seeing that. So I would never do it outside unless I have no professional place anywhere inside that I can do it. And even then that's when I might go to a virtual background, which again, I do not recommend a virtual background for interviews either, because there's almost always some glitchiness around it, unless you have a really good green screen and a very strong bandwidth. But no matter what you have, then someone is now, they're getting a reaction to you according to what background you picked. And so for a virtual happy hour, for a chamber meeting, for those more informal settings, they're great. They can be a lot of fun. I would not risk it for an interview unless you have no professional setting in your home that you can use.
Okay, good. That's it for the question.
Let's move on to the O. So the opening of the interview, this is just the few minutes at the beginning where you're trying to build some rapport, you're trying to draw a picture of who you might be, what product they'd be buying if they hired you. And so I would say that your goal here is a great first impression, because this is going to set the stage for the whole interview. You either make a really good first impression and now you're just confirming all of that, or you dig a big hole and it's really hard to come back from that. In fact, I know, I think it was Linda Trignano who advocated that the hiring decision is made in the first 90 seconds of the interview. I think a strong impression of the possible decision is made in that very beginning, that you have a chance to either confirm or deny or change. But it's so much easier if you start with a really good first impression. So how do you do that? Well, and how does COVID affect how you do that? Well, one of the obvious ones is you don't have the chance to go in person and look around the office and see the photos of the family on the desk, or the pictures of the tennis players on the wall that you can use to try and build some rapport at the beginning. You don't have the chance to give that firm handshake that sets things off on the right foot in the first place. But you do still have the chance to make sure you are exactly on time for that, or a couple of minutes early. You have the chance to smile and watch the body language and watch your own body language. What you're trying to do is exude this quiet confidence that makes someone really comfortable and really inclined to want you on their team, because they wouldn't invite you to have an interview if they didn't already think you were a pretty good candidate. If they weren't already thinking, I hope this person is the person I can hire, because I want to be done with the interview process. I want to get someone on my team. I want to get back to work and have someone filling that role. So you come in already with some positive vibes, and this is your chance to kind of capitalize on them. Now you can look around, in the background, like you would have done in the office. Someone coming to meet me, they might notice the Frisbee player on the wall, or an interesting book, like all I really need to know, I learned from watching Star Trek, and they might pick up on one of those things that, oh, are you a Frisbee player? And we'd start talking about how I started the first ultimate Frisbee team at Stanford, or something like that. And suddenly we've got something in common. We've got some rapport built. So you still have some opportunity to do that. But more importantly, you need to look for the verbal cues. You need to listen really carefully, particularly if you don't have video. If it's just phone, then you've got to really rely on the nonverbal cues. Is this, am I hearing someone who's talking quietly, or are they talking loudly? Are they talking fast? Are they talking slow? And I can modulate my performance a little bit towards what they are doing, which helps build rapport. It's finding things in common. If they, yeah, like look for questions that can be answered yes at the very beginning, that put us on the same page. Hey, you know, did you have any trouble with the connection? No, yeah, you know, things that we can kind of build on. But that's going to be a little harder because I don't have the physical presence to do it. But the other thing about this first impression is drawing the picture. And that's exactly the same as it would be if you were interviewing in person. And that, you know, that link, that's the hero story template that I know I've shared with the group and other presentations, but how to tell your story in a way that really engages the interviewer right from the start, gives them a picture of what they might be getting if they hired you. Because at the very beginning of the interview, I don't know you. I'm wondering what it is that you bring to the table. Yeah, I've seen your resume. Yeah, there's a reason I brought you in, but I'm not sure what the package really is. So this is your chance to draw the package that you want me to see. Draw that picture. So I say, oh, I get it. And I relax a little bit. I'm like, I see what David is all about. This is interesting. I hear some of the results he produces. He's someone who I can see how he might fit here. And now, instead of me being, as the interviewer, being distracted for the next 10 minutes as I'm drawing the picture myself, you've given me a picture and I'm just kind of validating and filling out aspects of it to flesh it out more. But we've already gotten past the kind of what might it be that I would be getting. So any questions about this part, David?
Nothing yet.
Okay.
So maybe just move along.
Sure. So the middle. Now, this is, you know, there's really a little of almost a script you can follow for that opening. You know, you've got your hero story. You've got, you know, someone says, tell me about yourself. There's the layup where you get to give your picture. They don't say that. They say something like, well, tell me why I should hire you. Or, well, you know, tell me something that I don't know about you. You know, you can still find a way to tell your story. Well, to tell you why you should hire me, I need to tell you a little bit about my background, and you can still give your story. But so there's a little kind of a script you can follow there. But then once you're past that, now the middle of the interview, this is, you know, really the 40 minutes between that little bit at the beginning and when they say, do you have any other questions at the end? This is like a jazz concert, because questions are going to be asked that you didn't anticipate. They're going to be asked in different orders. They're going to be questions that they're just asked a way that you never anticipated and you're not prepared for it. They're just going to be, you're going to have to react to what's going on and improvise in response to it, so the idea is not to have all of your prepared answers that you've memorized that you're going to pull out, because that's what it's going to sound like. All of your prepared, memorized answers. The idea is that you've worked on those answers well enough that they're in your head, that you can draw on them whenever you need them, not as memorized answers because you want them to come out a little different every time you tell them, but that you're so confident that you have answers, that you have the good stories, that you can think at a different level. You can say, well, I wonder why David asked me that question. That's really interesting. I wonder where he's trying to head with it. Oh, well, let me ask him this. And so you can create a good conversation instead of coming across as this person who just has good answers to my questions and nothing else. So your goal here is really to have an influential conversation, because you could have the best possible answers to every one of my questions. And if that's all you do, I am very unlikely to hire you, because at the end of the meeting, I'm sitting there saying, well, sure, he had really good answers to my questions, but I don't know if she can hold on a conversation. Or, well, Mark was really on the ball. I hear what he's done, but I don't know if I can send him to negotiate with my peers because we didn't even have a conversation. He just answered my questions. He's going to be very passive when he goes talking to someone else too. Oh yeah, well, Julie was really good, but I don't know if she's leadership material because she didn't take charge in any way. So your goal here is to really turn this into a conversation, and a conversation of influence, where you really get to engage me, ask good questions, and get to the core of what this is all about. So how does COVID impact this part of the interview? Well, I would say not very much, actually. Their goals are the same. And the way you're going to do it, except for kind of the little things about, the presence and all of that we already talked about. Your goal is to build rapport, to turn this into a conversation, to ask questions, not just answer them, and to never, ever make the mistake of saving your questions for the end of the interview. And that's a rookie mistake. It's also a very common mistake, because people are afraid not to have a good question at the end when the interviewer says, well, do you have any questions? Well, let me disabuse you of that, because suppose you have a really good, insightful question that you are saving for that time. As the interviewer, my reaction, instead of you're thinking you're going to impress me by asking this really insightful question, in fact, you're going to do exactly the opposite. Because what I'm going to be sitting there saying is to myself is, well, this was a really good question. If he'd asked this 20 minutes ago, we could have had a really good discussion about it. But why did he save it up for now when we don't have any time to really get into it? Does he even realize that this is a good question? Or was he afraid to ask it? All sorts of negative connotations. And if you've done a really good job of having a deep discussion throughout the interview, and you've asked me really good questions, I'm not going to be concerned in any way that you don't have questions. I mean, actually, you will always have at least one question, which is, okay, so when do I start? Or something along those lines. So there's always some question you will still have at the end, but do not save questions up for the end. And work to create this conversation. Find a way at the end of every second or third answer you give to ask a natural question yourself that gets us to a conversation. And if you do that really well, pretty soon you won't even have to think about it, because pretty soon it will be a conversation. You won't have to focus on how do I ask a question at the end of this answer I give, because it will already be a conversation. And by the way, think about what some of the comments before about what's, interviewers aren't comfortable with this video interviewing technique. They haven't done it that much. Well, interviewers in general are not trained to be interviewers. I told you, I did all the actuarial hiring for my company for 13 years. I never once was sent to a class of any sort on how to interview. I learned it on the job. I sat down with the head of HR and got pointers from him and so on. But interviewers are not trained to do this for the most part. So if you are able to show them how you can turn this interview into an engaging conversation, they're going to really appreciate that. And they're going to appreciate having that quality on their team that you're going to be able to do there as well. And finally, the middle is all about digging as deeply as you possibly can into the challenges that the interviewer faces, into the challenges that the unit faces, that the company faces, into the challenges that you might face in trying to achieve the goals that they've agreed that you would have to achieve on this job. You don't want to leave those things at the surface. You want to dig very deeply into that, because that's actually where the hiring decision is. You know, and people make the mistake all the time of doing this at a surface level. You know, they say, okay, so yeah, what's the biggest challenge? Well, challenges are projects are late. Oh, well, let me tell you how I bring projects back on track and I bring them under budget and so on. You know nothing about the problem at that point. The fact that projects are late is a very high level surface issue. You need to dig down deeply into why are projects on late? Why are they late? What causes them to be late? How does that affect the operation? You need to dig so deeply that the interviewer sees, wow, nobody's ever asked me that question before. They really understand their stuff. They've dug so deeply. In fact, the home run is when you've dug so deeply that the interviewer says, wow, David, this is terrific stuff. Tell me how you can solve this for me. And you're basically being asked to tell them why they should hire you. So you want to, that is the core. Out of everything in the interview process, that is the most important thing that you can do. And it takes a lot of practice. You know, that's where, you know, I know Alex is on the call, and he's always said how, you know, you should have at least 5 hours of interview role play before you ever have your first interview. And that's really true. You need, this is a skill that you want to really practice and get very good at. You do not want the interview for the job that you really want to be your practice interview. Any questions about this, David? I see your hand was up there.
Yep. Wanted to just get your attention. So Courtney asked, this might be from a little earlier, is the hero story the same as being asked, tell me about yourself?
Yes, it is the answer to tell me about yourself. It's a template for how you can approach that, that I found has been really successful for my clients. I mean, you can tell it any way you want, but that is a template that works very well. So yes, that would be the answer to tell me about yourself, or it's the way you tell your story, even if they haven't asked that specific question, and you find a way to tell your story. I had a client years ago. He was a senior person in the federal government looking to make a transition to a new role in the government, and he told me how, you know, we prepared. He had a great story. And he'd say, yeah, you know, no one ever asked me the question. But then he said, yeah, but because I practiced it, because I've got that down, I managed to tell the story in chunks as parts of answers to my first 3 or 4 questions. So he always got the story out. He just didn't get it out as one, you know, pitch. So yes, that's what that's for.
Douglas is asking, this was also from a few minutes ago, so I'm not sure of the specific context. What if you do all that and still don't get the job?
Well, I mean, that's reality, that sometimes there's not the fit. But then we get into the resale part of it and the follow-up and what you do. I say, if you don't get the job, but you had a good relationship, well, the first thing you want to do is you want to call, not write, not email, not text or anything else. You want to call the hiring manager. And you want to say something like, Douglas, I understand you hired someone else, and obviously I'm disappointed, but I understand it's a business decision. Would you be able to give me any feedback that might help me as I move forward? Now, the reason, and if I don't get Douglas, the hiring manager, I'm going to leave a voicemail to that effect. Now, the purpose of that, you're going to say, well, you know, no one ever gives me feedback. That's not the purpose, even though that's what I've asked for. Sometimes I do get feedback. I might get very helpful feedback, but the more important goal is I'm trying to remove any barrier to the relationship that might exist. We had a good rapport in the interview. You turned me down. You might therefore feel a little awkward about the relationship because you turned me down. You said no. So I'm basically showing that there are no hard feelings and that the relationship is important to me. And so now I'm positioning that interviewer to potentially be a networking contact for me going forward, or if something else opens up. I did that with a job that I got turned down for. Only I didn't know I'd been turned down at the point. I was doing my follow-up, and the interviewer said, "Oh, I'm so embarrassed. HR should have reached out to you. We hired someone else." The next week, he called me back. He said, "Well, now I'm really embarrassed because the guy I hired didn't work out, and I really want you to come work for me." And basically had me come out for one more round of interviews, not because he needed to evaluate me, but he said because he wanted to make sure I really understood exactly what the job was, because that was the problem with the first person. Once he started, he realized he was in the wrong job. And I think I got a better offer as a result, and it was my dream job. I was there for the next 13 years. So it's not necessarily the end of the story when you get turned down, particularly if you do it the right way.
Okay, and we're gonna have to watch our pace, John. There are a lot of questions coming through. Pat's
Okay.
asking, shouldn't you always be you and not play a role?
Oh yeah, this is, I'm not talking about trying to be something you're not. You want to come across genuine. And the same thing in the resume. Yeah, it's one reason why there are some good resume writers out there, but an awful lot of the resume, the times I see people having someone write a resume for them, basically they have something that's not you. And the first thing that happens is, even if they get to the interview, there's this disconnect between the document and the person. So yeah, you're not playing a role in terms of I'm trying to be something I'm not. I want to be genuine. I don't want to get the job and find out that I am not, I haven't found out the things I needed to do, and the challenges are things that I don't want to do. I am really trying to evaluate this just as much as they're trying to evaluate me. But at the same time, that doesn't mean I'm gonna go in and spout out a laundry list of all the negative things about me that might not get me hired. So I'm trying to present what I have to offer genuinely and in the best light. So why don't we move on, and we can take additional questions at the end so we don't run too late. So the end of the interview, let's say you've done a really good job of the whole middle. Okay, what do you do at the end? Well, your goal is you want there to be nothing left to chance. And how does COVID impact this part? Well, basically, not much different about it than before. So the first thing is you got to find out how you did. That's part of not leaving anything to chance. You want to uncover and then answer any objections there might be to your candidacy. So think about how you might ask a question that uncovers that. And you want to make sure that in the process, you in effect ask for the job. You don't want me as the interviewer wondering if you want the job, because I guarantee you, if I have two candidates and they're relatively close, they're, in terms of whether I would hire them, and one I am absolutely certain wants this job, and the other I have serious questions about it, I'm going to offer it to the one who I know wants this. I do not want to go through the effort of coming up with an offer, of convincing my boss, of getting HR on board, of doing all the steps to make an offer to someone who I don't really think is that excited about it. And then finally, you want to uncover the next steps, the time frame, when it's going to happen, and then take charge by having your own action step that you are going to present to them. I'm going to say something like, once I've asked the questions, we've uncovered when things are going to take place. Okay, great. So I will plan to call you a week from Monday to check on the status if I haven't heard from you by then. So I have done a couple of things when I do that. One, I've set things up so I can just mark my calendar and I'm not worried come the end of next week. Oh, I haven't heard from them. When am I going to hear from them? What's going on? Should I call them? No, because I've already marked my calendar that I'm calling them a week from Monday. Two, I've shown them how I operate, that I'm organized, that I do professional follow-up, that I don't just leave things to chance. And three, if they don't call me before a week from Monday, I now get the chance to show them all over again when I call and I leave a voicemail if I don't reach them. That shows my upbeat, my professionally persistent technique, that also shows that I follow through and do what I said I'm going to do when I said I'm going to do it, which is, again, a quality that may not have been anywhere in the job description, but it's something that is makes it more likely that I get hired. And then finally, the resale, we'll just talk very quickly about that. The resale is what happens after the interview. And there are several stages to it, but the key to this is keeping the interviewer excited. And again, how does COVID impact it? Well, I can't go in person, but I can do the same sorts of things I would have done otherwise. I do not just send a thank you. I send a marketing letter that reminds them what's the package they'd be getting if they hired me. Why should they hire me? Based on what we've discussed in the interview. So unlike a cover letter at the beginning where I'm hoping to hit the right points, now I know the things we've talked about. I know the points to hit. I get to I want to demonstrate my professionalism, my organization, my passion, my proactivity. I want to have a keep in touch strategy that keeps my name in front of them. You know, that person I was telling you about at the beginning of the call, one of the things he did, it got to a point where it had been about a week and a half, and he hadn't heard from them. He'd done the different follow-ups, but there was one hiring manager among the three jobs who, when he'd left the interview, had said, right before, he'd said, well, I have to admit, we have a very strong internal candidate. And David said, oh, well, gee, I'm sorry, because I really would have liked to work with you. And she says, no, don't take that as no, because you are a strong candidate. So he hadn't heard from her for about a week and a half. And what he did was call her just to say, hey, you know, I know it's been a little while since we've chatted, and I just thought it might be good to catch up. When would be a good time to talk? Got an immediate response from her saying, I'm so sorry it's taken a little while, but that's because the paperwork's in the process and you should have an offer tomorrow. And he did. So you find different ways, and keep in touch with them. You know, not always just I'm following up on status, but maybe you find interesting observations based on the discussion you had, resources that might be helpful to them, articles. You find ways to kind of break it up, but you make sure you keep in touch on a regular basis, and you make sure to prep your references. Because like I was saying, I think references are going to be more important in this environment. They're going to weigh a little bit stronger. And I never want any of my references to be caught unawares that I've gone on an interview. I want to make sure they know every interview I've gone on, where there might be outreach, why I'd be good for that, what it is that they might be looking for, so they are fully prepared. And then there's even resales after you get the offer, but this is focused on getting the offer. So since we have a bunch of questions and we're running to time, why don't I skip the rest of the slides? They'll still be there, you know, in the slide deck. But let's just take other questions that people might have. And so I'll just jump to the end. This is that workshop that David was mentioning that Marty Latman and I are doing Wednesday night. And it's a low cost webinar. And in fact, the bonuses make it ridiculously low because we're giving a recording of a prior webinar in addition to the live webinar and some other bonuses. So anyway, check it out. It's going to be a really good session. So what questions do people have, David?
Yeah, and also about this, the information, in case you don't get a screenshot of this, it is posted in the PSG of Mercer County LinkedIn group. It links, that information LinkedIn group will link to a full page description of the entire program, how to sign up. I think it's just $20 for the whole session and all the bonuses, so it may be interesting to you. Yeah, let's see. So David is asking, not me, does asking questions during the interview create an atmosphere of either taking over the interview or delaying questions that the interviewer would want to ask?
I don't think so. It's showing me engagement. Now, yes, if what I do is, if every time the interviewer asks me a question, I immediately throw a question back at them, yeah, that's like a ping pong match. So I wouldn't recommend that, but throwing in a question at the end of every second or third answer I give, that's related, that's very natural. That's a, and actually the idea of taking control, I want someone on my team who isn't passive, who doesn't just sit back and take whatever I throw at them. I want someone who does question me a little bit, who does challenge me a little bit. This is showing that quality. So I would argue that it's all in how you do it. I'm not gonna say, oh, before I answer that question, let me ask you this, but I'm going to do it in a natural way, like I would have a conversation with anyone.
Wendy is asking, how do you ask panelists questions to keep a conversation flow?
Panelists are obviously more difficult because I've got all the attention. But again, it's about finding a way that it relates to something that I am answering. The person asks me, for example, a great example is when someone says, "Tell me about your biggest strength." And what a lot of people do is they immediately launch into a story about their biggest strength. Well, you're missing a great opportunity there. Instead of launching into that single story, you could do something like this. Well, I'd have to say my greatest strengths are my ability to influence people, my ability to give persuasive presentations, particularly to senior management, and my mentoring skills. Which would you like me to tell you about first? So now I've just, in a very natural way, asked a question that draws the interviewer or that panelist into the conversation, and it accomplishes two other goals. It shows them that I have a breadth of skills, and I get information according to which one they ask me to expand on. That one must be more important. So I'm getting a little bit more insight into what's important to them. And what if, and they might say, well, those are really interesting, but what I was really hoping for was you tell me something about your project management skills. Okay, so I can tell them about my strength with that. So, but I get a lot more interaction just by that. So I look for what is it that I can follow up with on the question I've been asked that would be natural. They asked me about, tell me about your project management skills, and I tell them about some results I produced and techniques. And I could finish that up saying, well, one of the things I've observed is that there are certain critical techniques like this, and this. How do you see those working in your operation? So again, I'm bringing it based on something I'm answering. I'm bringing a natural question back to them, and I think that's fine in a panel, just as it would be one-on-one. I just treat each panelist as a one-on-one interview in that moment.
Okay, thanks, John. I don't have a first name, D. Nagy. John, aren't these times right now challenging? Should we show how we can help and shine?
Absolutely, they are challenging, and part of showing how you can help and shine. There's one thing. There's being explicit about. Let me tell you about my video conferencing skills. Da 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 da. And there's the more subtle approach of let me demonstrate my really powerful video conferencing skills. So certain things I want to simply demonstrate in the way I approach this, how good I am. And other things I'm going to say, well, this is going to be really important to them, like the ability to be incredibly productive during remote work. So I'm going to come up with a story about that. And if it doesn't come up in a natural way that they specifically ask a question, then I look for the place where it might be reasonable to bring that up. And it might be along the lines of, one of the things I've observed in this time is that there's going to be such a high percentage of remote work. And let me tell you how I approach remote work. Would that be helpful to you? And so now I basically get them to say yes to me giving them a story about how I approach remote work, and I'm gonna make sure I've got something that points to how I organize my day, how I put together my work in a very, very productive way, how I approach being on call, some of the qualities of remote work that would show them that I'm going to be a great remote worker.
Okay. Barbara's asking, could John show the template before the session is over? That came in from about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, all you have to do is go to that link, put in your browser window, my website, jhacareers.com/herostory.htm. It's up there on my website permanently, so you can go grab it, read it.
Okay, and MacArthur is asking, can you give an example of a hero story, or can you give us example perhaps what not to say of a less effective tell me about yourself? I'm wondering if that's kind of the same answer.
Yeah, it is. Well, the whole idea of the hero story is to tell you my background in an engaging way, but to make sure to include some result statements. And everyone's going to do it. You're going to bundle your background differently. It's about looking at the different eras, the different jobs I've had, and saying what makes sense. What should I bundle? What should I ignore? What's going to make this case? But most importantly, I want to show a trajectory that's headed towards where I'm going now that makes sense. So I mean, if it were me, so let's say I had given up on individual coaching. I said, I'm tired of that. What I want to do is I want to now be an executive coach at a Fortune 500 company. And I go on an interview for that. So the way I might approach it is something like this. Well, I graduated from Stanford and went to work in an actuarial program at Equitable, where I progressed from a wide variety of jobs to project manager for the disability line. But what I'm most proud of is when I took on the chance to develop productivity tools for our department for Equitable's first ever corporate-wide productivity improvement contest, managed to come up with ways to measure productivity in a financial services environment and apply manufacturing techniques that won everyone in my 150-person department a $3,000 bonus. I then was recruited by Commercial Life to build an actuarial department from scratch. So for 13 years, I did all the hiring, the mentoring, the people development work. But the thing that really got me excited was when I was given the chance to manage a unit that was non-actuarial, where the head of the unit had pretty much retired on the job. and the unit was completely demoralized. And over the course of a year and a half, I was able to completely turn that around to where I had a really highly motivated team. They were producing 50% more projects with no increase in headcount, and they loved what they were doing. They were recognized as one of the most productive operations in our company. I then pivoted, decided I was chief actuary, but that wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. I opened a consulting practice, helping companies make sure their systems were doing what they were supposed to do, and earned over $2.5 million in revenues doing that. But at the same time, I realized all the skills I was using to market that and market myself were things I could teach other people. I could teach them how to land a job. So I did that as a hobby on the side of that practice. And when finally I had one client giving me full-time work for 5 years, and when they moved on and I needed to find another client, I said, you know, I got something else that's calling me, and I opened my career search counseling practice. And I've helped hundreds of people land the job and pay they deserve. And when I put it all together, I think what I bring to the table is I really understand corporate dynamics. I understand how to motivate people, how to build effective and productive teams. I know how to make persuasive presentations and get buy-in from senior management. And what I'd love to do is to be able to come into a company like yours and help your executives and your budding executives both become and be seen as influential leaders.
Okay.
So that would be a sample. The only thing I left out, I realized afterwards, I left out the headline to start the story, which would help focus it a little bit. But you know, that's the sort of story I would tell. You know, I was an actuary for many, many years. How much actuarial work did I talk about? Zero. I didn't hide that I was an actuary, but I pulled out stories that might be relevant to where I want to go next. I did not talk about the actuarial work I did. So that's how you approach those stories.
Thank you, John. We've got a few more questions. After a candidate has been rejected, would a influence letter work?
It could, but I would start with a phone call, because phone calls are so much more powerful. I mean, the influence letter saying, hey, I'm so disappointed I didn't get hired, but here's what I thought I brought to the table. I don't think it comes across the same way as when I'm able to do it in person, talking to someone, or at least through their voicemail, and they get to hear me. Now, after I've had the conversation with them, and I could send them something after that saying, thanks so much for chatting with me. Those were great points. And I'd love to stay in touch with the future. So I could do follow-up in writing, but I don't think writing right after I've been turned down, for one thing, it shows a little bit of kind of a passive approach. It's like I might get it and say, well, okay, that's nice, he can write, but why didn't you pick up the phone? It's telling me a little bit about how you operate. In fact, I see this a lot in networking, people who are hesitant to pick up the phone to try to set up networking meetings, and they rely on sending LinkedIn invitations and emails. And I'm always talking to my clients about, well, okay, you can do that, but why not just pick up the phone and call them? It's so much more powerful.
Okay. Okay, so Tatiana asked, if I worked the last 3 years remotely, how do I highlight my experience if they don't say the position is remote?
Well, in the course of the conversation, I'm going to ask how they operate. We're going to have a conversation. So I'm going to get a chance to find out if they see this operating remotely. But I would pretty much guarantee, I mean, there's certain, obviously it depends on the industry and the job. But in general, no matter what happens in this, it's going to take a while for companies to go back to the way they operated, and they're still not going to go all the way back. I know of major financial services, actually two very large financial services companies in the city that have already said they are not reopening their office this year. And the ones that are rethinking, how many people are we even going to have in that office? Are we going to create more satellites, or just let a whole lot of people work remotely to reduce the number of people in person and the risk involved? So I might approach it, if I don't know, just about how I'm very flexible. I can work in any environment. Let me tell you how, for instance, I've been working remotely the last 3 years. Let me tell you some of the tools I use to be very productive. And that might lead to a good conversation about it. So I can just, I work with what I'm able to find out from that.
Got two similar questions, one from Nancy, one from Debbie. What is the best way to ask for the job?
It's context sensitive. This is, part of that jazz of, what I react to what's going on. But I would say one very natural way is in how I uncover any objections. I could start by saying, wow, this was great. This is based on everything you've said. This sounds like a really interesting job. I would be very interested in this. Can I ask you, what else could I tell you that would convince you I might be the person you'd want to hire? So I've basically told them I want the job in the way I asked about it. Now, on the other hand, I had someone last year who had a panel interview. He felt like it went well. He actually, got people laughing a little bit in it. So at the very end, they said, do you have any other questions? He said, yeah, I just have one. When do I start? And they all laughed, and he got the offer. So just you use the context, but find some way to either ask directly for the job or make it clear from the way you finish things up that you are definitely interested. You're not saying, no matter what you offer me or how much you lowball me, I will take the job. What you're doing is you're expressing genuine interest in the job itself. That, hey, based on everything we've said, I'm very interested, and I think I bring XYZ to the table. What else can I tell you that would convince you you'd want to hire me?
Good, thanks. One thing I remember when I went through starting my business, I spoke to a coach about getting business, closing the deal. And one comment was, make the ask, ask for it. And so you've kind of described that. Still a few more coming in. Sometimes the interviewer says, I will get back to the recruiter, and doesn't give me their contact details. How to address that? Well,
it's going, again, this is all context sensitive. I'm going to start by, before I ever have the interview, I'm going to dug into what their contact information is. If I don't have it when I get there, if we're doing a remote interview, well, for one thing, if they've called me, I've now got contact information. I got their phone number at least. If it's a video interview, it's very natural to say right up front, look, I know that sometimes technical glitches occur. How would I reach you if we get disconnected? So I can find some way to ask for that. I can ask the recruiter for contact information. Say I want to make sure that I send them a thank you letter. Where would I write it? I can check their website. I can check the switchboard. There are all different ways I could look for that. But in the end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that I will plan to follow up with you, a week from Monday, whatever it's going to be. If they say, well, no, we will contact you through the recruiter, I'm going to respect that, because that's the instruction they've given me. But I'm going to always make the ask. I'm going to pursue what is going to advance me the most. But then if they're not comfortable with that, if they say there's a different process, I will back off and respect their process. So, so if they say, we'll contact you through if I'm going to first make the call, if they just first say, we will contact you through the recruiter. I've kind of missed the chance to do my action step. So I want to ask that before we get to that stage. But if they, in the end, if they say, well, don't call me, call HR, don't call me, call the recruiter, I'll respect that.
This is from Douglas, should my hero story be specific on my profession or a special project not related to my profession now, but I did in a different profession, or should it be a personal story?
It should be focused on what will sell you for this job. If what will sell you for, if something you've done that's outside of the profession is going to be part of what's going to sell you for this job, then yeah, you're going to include that. If it's irrelevant or it's tangential, you're not going to include it. So you judge by what's the sales pitch, what's the things that would sell me for this particular role. Like when I was talking about the actuarial work, I didn't talk about actuarial work. I talked about the titles, but I talked about the things that I had accomplished that would be relevant. So that's your goal, looking for what's relevant in your background.
Pat's asking, should you project concepts that you have rather than always giving details to show your talents?
I'm not sure I follow the question. It sounds like you're saying, should I be general or specific? And you should always be specific. Everything you say, you need to have a concrete result that you are discussing. You never saying, I am really good at project management is a absolutely worthless statement. Giving me an example of how you bring projects back on time, back to budget, you deliver them ahead of time, whatever, that's a worthwhile statement. So get rid of the generic statements in everything you do.
Okay. Richard's asking, I think you answered this in the prior question. In a COVID environment, in our COVID environment, you don't get a chance to exchange the business card. Do you formally request the phone number of each person you interview with?
I would request that sort of thing ahead of time, actually. If I'm working through a recruiter, I'm going to expect the recruiter to get me the names, the titles, and contact information of every single person I'm going to be meeting so I can do the research. If it's through HR, I'm going to ask HR for those sorts of things. But I want to, if I get to the interview and I don't have it yet, I'm going to try to find some way to ask for it naturally. That, hey, I know, in case we get cut off, what's the email address where I can reach you?
Okay. Barbara asked, in your slide, you talked about the interviewer's tension. Can you speak about how we can identify the interviewer's tension through the video?
Well, you're gonna watch the body language. You're gonna listen to the way they present and what they say. If you're talking to me and I start going back like this, or I start doing this, or I'm starting to read things, you've lost me. You know that you've lost me, and you need to do something to bring my attention back to you. If I'm leaning forward, if I'm smiling, if I'm asking you a lot of questions, I'm engaged. And so you keep going in that direction, and keep going in the direction of where the engagement is.
Okay, John, what a trooper. This is now our last question, and it's from Jean. Can you share which 2 financial services companies you mentioned that won't reopen in New York City this year?
I don't, given who told me, I'm not sure if I should, but they're very, very large ones.
Okay. Do they rhyme with any words? No. Very good.
They rhyme with financial services.
Oh, yeah. Very good. And we also, John, if you haven't been following the chat on your own, a lot of thank yous and messages of appreciation. And people also shared their thoughts to some of the other questions that were being asked. So thank you, everybody, for participating that way as well. Do you have a final thought, John, or are we ready to wrap up?
I think we're ready to wrap up. Now, I think there is a way, right, as I recall, to save the chat for,
yes,
for anyone who wants to
yes,
be able to come back to that later.
Yeah, so two things. One is I will actually be posting the chat on our website in the same place where I'm posting your slides. I'll also post the link. But if you check the upper left corner of Go to Meeting, in the upper left corner is the logo with the word Go to Meeting, and that's actually a drop-down menu. And in the middle of the drop-down menu is Save Chat Log, and it will save it to your computer. So if you want to save the chat right now, you're welcome to. I will be posting that just a little bit later. John, thank you very much. This was really spectacular. There were two takeaways for me. One is interview prep hasn't changed just because we're in the COVID-19 era. The way we interact with people directly really hasn't changed, but certainly the mechanism for communicating with people has changed, and that could be because of being online and maybe some of the challenges of doing that. And so really still do the same preparation, learn about the company, learn about the people that you're interviewing with, do your homework, engage with them, whether you're in person or on the phone or on video, you do need to engage with them. And you really want to make a good impression with the way you interact with them. And of course, you do have some of the challenges that John mentioned about being on video and how to overcome those a little. So those were the two things I took away. It's still important to engage with those people. Another thought I had about, what happens if you don't get feedback about the interview? And so this is, my 2 cents. I don't know if John agrees 100%. And I've done this for a while too. I try not to get very hung up with that. If I get a no feedback, or more importantly, even if I get, we're sorry, but we're moving on with another candidate, I know the natural reaction is, what did I do wrong? What can I do better? And I've decided for myself, I'm not going to dwell on that, because the next interviewer and the next company that I interview may not have the same criteria or standards as the person that decided to pass on me. So, my observation is, if you can get the information, great. There may be some helpful information, but try not to dwell on that, because really you want to move forward. So, my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with you, because the purpose of trying to get it is much less about actually getting feedback and more about making sure there's no barrier to that relationship going forward.
Sure. And I can tell you, I interviewed with a company in mid-1999, and in the end, I didn't get the position. Later, I found out I came in second place. But I kept up with the hiring manager, and he wound up hiring me in February 2000. So, maintaining that relationship, what John was talking about, is really powerful. I want to let you know the slides, this slide deck that John created is already posted on our website, which is psgofmercercounty.org, psgofmercercounty.org. On the right side, kind of in the middle of the page, is a link called Meeting Presentation Documents. And so that's what we consider this. This was a meeting, and John has provided presentation documents. So click on that link, and the very top of that page, the meeting presentation document page, is a link to get to these slides. You can read them, you can download them. So John, thank you for sharing. A little later today, I will be posting the chat once I can download it. I will not be editing the chat at all. And then also, when the video is ready, that takes a little longer from GoToMeeting, I'll be uploading a link to the video, as well as posting the video on our YouTube channel. And if you want to find our other videos, you can go to our YouTube channel. On the right side of our website is a YouTube link. And if you click on that, you go right to our YouTube channel. So that's all about this program and what we have coming up over the next few weeks. Next week, June 26th. By the way, I think tomorrow is the first day of summer, so Alex Freund will be our presenter on June 26th, the first meeting that we have this summer. Why can't I get that job? It's kind of similar to a question or two that we got a little bit earlier from John and during John's program. So Alex will be talking about that. Alex is a career coach specializing in interview prep, another good friend of PSG of Mercer County and lots of other groups. Why can't I get that job? Will be next week, virtual. All the connection information will be on the email we send to you and on our website. We'll be posting the link a little later today. Then the following is July 3rd. Normally we take July 3rd off, But because of the COVID era that we're in, most people probably are not vacationing. We will have a meeting, and it will be my presentation called Interview Preparation and Tips. So it seems to be kind of a 3 in a row related to interview and getting the job, so three weeks in a row. We will also be talking about video interview tips in that as well. So if you're interested, please feel free to attend on July 3rd. And John and Marty Latman do have their presentation called Ask the Experts, How Do I Get a Great Job? So it's a panel. It's on Wednesday, June 24th, 7 to 8 o'clock in the evening. And the link and the information is on the PSG of Mercer County LinkedIn group. I did also post it in the chat. So if you want to scroll through there and copy it from there, you can do so as well. So there's information about it as well as the ability to sign up. George Pace has been keeping his webinars active, and he broadcasts weekly on Sunday morning through Facebook, and that's facebook.com/keeppace. That's one word, facebook.com/keeppace. Other groups that are in the area that are still broadcasting and keeping their meetings virtual, our cousin organization, PSG of Central New Jersey, will be on Monday the 22nd, 10:30 in the morning. Tamara Causey Robinson, Coach Tamara Causey Robinson, will be presenting the value of values. Tamara is one of our friends as well. Actually, she was our last in-person presentation before we went virtual. So Tamara, always a good presentation to listen to. She's a wonderful presenter. And also New Jersey Job Seekers is now virtual again. New Jersey Job Seekers is the oldest continuously running job seeker support group in New Jersey, if not in the United States. Their meetings are always Tuesday evenings, 7:30 in the evening for about an hour. And I posted the link to their meeting in our PSG of Mercer County LinkedIn group. They use GoToMeeting as well. So that is all our information for this week. Once again, thank you, John. Appreciate you being a part of this group and a continued supporter. Have a happy Aloha Friday. Continue sharing and enjoying the moment. Maybe you'll wear your flip-flops on National Flip-Flop Day as well. So everybody, thank you for participating. Stay healthy and safe for the next week, and we hope to see you again virtually next week as well. Bye-bye, everybody.